It is my privilege that we can continue our seminar about the law of life, about why do we get sick? Can we know for sure where disease is coming from? Just a couple of days ago, I had an elderly couple that were over 80, and the lady had a dysfunction of her throat at the right side. She said, I feel there a pain and a irritation, and I must cough for 3 weeks now. I was consulting her and did not see anything special that would say, okay, there is a damage that comes from an outside factor. Her husband, who came with her, had an eczema on his right nose, a little bit on the left, but the right nose was very cutting. Eczema is cutting in the skin, and he had it also for about 3 weeks. And I asked her, because women are usually more able to speak out what they have on their heart, and she said, yes, we have a great private situation in which we are struggling with, and she has great worries. Now, the body shows that what is in our spirit, in our mind, and that we must know how it works, how it comes to happen, that what you think makes you sick. In order to answer that, you need an absolute foundation, and an absolute foundation brings you to an absolute result. Knowing that disease can never at any situation come by chance. Disease is a program that is put into action according to the breaking of that basic law of the universe, that nothing can exist or function by itself, and nothing can do anything for itself. And whenever we have worries, it looks like we want the good for the others, but actually we want it for ourselves. We will see that humans do enter into a prisonership as they don't know what happens in their heart, in their subconscious. But it's always the problem that you want to do something for yourself that comes from the idea that you can do something for yourself and out of yourself. But is that possible? The law says nothing can exist or function by itself. And nothing can do anything for itself. Everything is a channel that serves for a purpose. It takes, in order to give, and must have an entrance and an exit, a cause and an effect. And it must work in a circuit. This basic law, on which you can trace down every issue of what we have in our world today. Every issue. There is none that is exception from this. That's why understanding this is understanding the issue, and then as understanding the cause, we can also work to come to a solution. The human being has a fixed structure. It has a fixed function, and it has an absolute basic needs program, so to say. And if you miss them, if they're not according to how they should be supplied, so that function and structure should work well, then we have an issue. So we have seen the structure. The human being is many organs, one organism. Now, we have seen that we are, as a being, a soul. And there are two different organs, so to say, two different kind of organs in our soul. We have the brain, and the brain is connected with all the organs of the body. So he's representative of all the other organs that are physical. So the brain is there, and above the brain we have the spirit or our mind, by which the brain works through the thoughts and decisions of the spirit. So they are both functioning as channels. The brain is here the leader of the body, so to say, the capital of the body. And as the brain is part of the body, it is a physical organ, and physical elements, they function as channels, but they always just function as a reaction to the impulse that comes to them. So they have only the ability to react, never to act. Now the spirit has the ability to act and react. That makes the difference of the physical part of the soul and the spiritual part of the soul. The body and everything that is physical must be governed from outside of them. So my hand must follow the commands of my spirit that is outside of the body, so to say. It's connected to the body. It's like the piano player plays the piano, and the piano keys just transmit that what he puts into them. So everything that is physical must be governed from outside. You push the buttons and it works, and so on. The spirit is an entity that governs himself only from inside. Yes, it's a channel as well. It must take the needs from outside in order to be able to do something, but it is governing itself from inside. You can push the spirit. He feels everything in our body, but he must not react. He feels, but feeling is not reaction, is, oh, there is something. He can react to that, or he can try to ignore it. But every action a spirit does comes from inside out. And that's so important to understand. That makes the two organs, I would say, of the soul very, very different, and makes us understand how things work. It's most important to understand the difference between a physical element and a spiritual element, or a physical organ and a spiritual organ. And the spirit is our spiritual organ that is part of our being, part of the soul, as we have seen it yesterday. Now, our main question is thoughts. Thoughts, is that what we live from? Thoughts, is that what we do all the time? We think, and we put the question, what are they? And we have seen that thoughts transport spiritual information. That this couple is occupied in their mind with worries for probably a child, because I asked specifically, do you have children? And if you have children, then you might worry for them, or you have grandchildren when you are in your 80s. So thoughts are a transportation of information. They only work when you can put something on them. It's like with words. Words you hear. Acts you see. But you must put that information that you hear and see on a carrier. And information never comes alone. It always comes with a carrier. And the thoughts are just a carrier of information. So I hope that's as simple as I can explain it. And then is the question, where do they come from? So where is the origin of thoughts? And they come from the spirit. Only a spirit can think. So we have that cleared, And then we have the next question, that is, where do they start? And that's what was my prayer to God when I came to understand the human being. I wanted to know, where do thoughts start? Because there where they start, there is the beginning of our function. There is the beginning where we put things into action. There where the thought starts, there you start acting. Now, is that an important thing to know? As we as humans can see ourselves and know ourselves, I think that's the most important thing. To know, where do I begin? Where is that button where my thoughts are starting from? And that is in our subconscious. And that we want to see in our lecture today. So we saw in our first case that it's just a case that is always the same. We saw that the body reacts, in her case, with headache. In other cases, it can react with speech disorder, whatever disorder it is. I had these days a young lady in her 40s, and she came because she went from doctor to doctor with a dysfunction of her voice. So since 1 year and a half, she has a voice disorder. The vocal cords don't function anymore like they should, even though on vision level you see nothing, but you hear it. The voice doesn't work well. And you and she has this irritation there that she must do all the time, and sometimes coughing. Now, this is a body reaction. She went to physicians, she went to logotherapy, but it didn't help. And finally, one referred her to me. But she did not have only this 1.5 year dysfunction of her vocal cords. Since I looked to the whole body, because we have to understand the whole body, she also had, since almost 4 years, she had a surgery on her uterus because she had a big tumor there, a myoma, not a malignant tumor. And then when exploring her physical things, you find that she had more symptoms. And when you have more body symptoms, you know that there are more issues, or they are heavy and they're not solved. Now, how does it come that you have a voice disorder or a myoma or a tumor grows in your uterus? Who makes that? How can that happen? And the pattern is that you have loving thoughts, and in her case, she also had relationship issues, and the timing is very beautiful to see when things happen, and shortly after that, you have the first symptom. And then later on, the symptoms get more and more, and if you don't know where they start, how can you ever get to the point to solve it? You can do therapies as long as you want. You won't solve the problems that come from your thoughts. So she had before loving thoughts, she was free, and that's when we are healthy. And then comes the information, then comes the event. We must deal with it. We cannot just ignore it, and it is something that really is in our needs. And so we react with disappointment, with worries, with hurt, whatever the reaction is. It's a reaction that hurts the body, that puts a wrong impulse there. And that is always the case because you're a prisoner. If we would be free in our thinking, then in our body could not happen anything wrong. Of course, except some outside damages that the body could be uh, happening to him. But if the spirit would be free, we would have never a dysfunction that comes through our thinking. So worries or disappointments in relationships bring people to destroy themselves. Who else can make her the voice disorder? Who else can have access to that nerve that puts the vocal cords into function? It's only her. But where does her thinking start? Where does it start so that it shows the dysfunction? And our voice is, yes, very sensitive to what happens to the spirit, because through the voice we express that what is most inside of us. Now, not only through the voice, but the voice is something that just shows who you are subconsciously. And when it is in a disorder, then you know there must be something that the mind, the spirit, has on his heart. There must be a heavy burden. And the heavier it is, I could observe, the more stronger is the physical reaction to that. So looking to understand why, what is the beginning of thinking, I found one thought by which our minds function. I put, of course, at the beginning in my study, the patients in group, those who have ringing in the ear, those who have dizziness, and those who have throat pain. And I was looking to each group to see where do this disorder comes. And I looked to their stories. Are they particular? Are they different? And yes, the stories were different. Like every human story is different from the components that it has, from the events that come. But at the end, I could see that the story has the same root. One thought at the bottom of every story. One thought at the beginning of the reaction or the action of the spirit. And that one thought on which every negative story starts is loss. So in each group, I could not find anything than loss. Now, in the tinnitus, it's most a relationship loss. Someone dies or you're in a conflict. Dizziness is an actual fight. Usually when you have it, it's because you're caught in a battle with someone. And the throat and also the eczema, but throat especially, is worry or fear. Now we could trace fear to everything back, but it's very interesting how the body reacts to that same thought, to the same impulse on different organs. But in the end, it does not matter where a thing appears in the body. It can only appear as a disease by the thought of loss. So when I observed that every issue of mankind that brings him in a spiritual prisonership, that brings him to not know the way out, is the thought of loss. And what kind of physical symptoms follow was irrelevant. I could just see the sides of the brain because we have two sides, and so I wondered why this comes on the right side and on the left side. So those are also beautiful things to see that disease comes as a consequence, as a result, as a program, never by chance. So understanding that, and for me today, I don't need to know, I look to the body and I know from no matter what body reaction, if you are not hit from outside or poisoned or frozen or burnt, those are also things that can injure our body. But if you don't have that injury, then we can be sure, if you have just a nail grown into the skin, that it's the thought of loss. That is that thought that, when you have it, destroys or gives the wrong impulse. Now, seeing that and being convinced that there is not more to any human being, and I discovered this by God's grace at the end of 2007, and I was so amazed. I thought, if all the issues of humanity come from one thought, then things get more simple, get more easy to be understood. And so I started to see that we are having a subconscious we're not aware of and how it works. And so looking to the consciousness and the subconsciousness. And in the conscious we have our will, and our will is like a screen, I would say, that tells the spirit his needs. And everything that is green here is the physical needs: hunger, thirst, freezing, sweating, whatever is there, the spirit realized that's a physical need. And then he has to supply it, because only he can supply the needs of the body. We have seen that the body can do that. That's why the body asks for it. And if the spirit wants to fulfill it, he does it. If not, the body must wait. And then also the spirit has his own needs. And there is one need, this could I observe in all my cases, that is dominant in our life. And with me, it's harmony. That's the H that stands for harmony. So I look to everything through the need of harmony. Of course, I have also the need for justice, and I have the need for liberty, the need for truth, the need for wisdom, and the need for security. Now, we all have the same needs, but since the order of the needs are a little bit different, we have a different personality and another priority of the fulfilling of our needs. This is why in our will, not one is the same. You see, we see this in identical twins. They are identical from their physical, or almost identical from their physical genetic base, but since they have a different spirit, because the spirit of the one twin has another main issue or a main need than the spirit of the other twin. And so you see they have different characters. And if they have a different character, they also deal differently with their bodies. And so some twin has this body look or this shape, and the other a little bit different. Now they're very, very close, but when you study them, and I just recently had an identical twin, two young ladies who were students or are students, and they came at different times to do some practice at my clinic, my practice. They came for an elective week, And so I could observe how different they are. Even though outside, you could, when you look better, you saw some differences, but you see how different the character is. And that shows that in our spirit, we are as different as we are different in our bodies. Because that's how our Creator made us, to be different on the things that are not functional things. That's why in our will, we are different. We have different tastes, we want different things, and that's so God-given. And that makes us, to be able to find out what the other's wishes are and so on. So it makes us beautiful, I would say, that we have particular things. And those are seated in our will, in our consciousness, in our spirit. But in the subconscious, where the function is, we are all the same. That's why the one reacts to disharmony and the other reacts to this security, has no security. They might get different things in their body, but the way they think is the same. So if the function of the body is identical in every human being, that's the heart is beating, the eye is, so to say, bringing in the wave so that the spirit can see something, the hands in both and all of us move if they're still connected to the brain, through the nerves. So if all that is functioning identical, so also the way we think must be the same. That's why, even though we have different wishes, we encounter and have different ways to what we want and not, the way we think about it, the way we supply the need is always the same, because function is identical in every human being. And we want to see this, the function of the subconscious. So we see the brain level, that's the green level, and we know that in the physical world, in a computer, you can only type in plus and minus, yes or no, electricity or no electricity. And so we have the plus and the minus and the zero. Now, the spirit is above this brain, and he must, in order to put in the body to function, order all his events, everything that comes to him, just in two criteria. And I discovered first the minus criteria, the loss thought, and after about 4 months, I saw that we also have a plus thought, that is gain. I must imagine that everything you encounter in your life that comes into your 5 senses, the spirit must evaluate. He must put it either in gain or in loss. And if it's the zero line, that means I don't care about that because that's not my first thing to need. He does not act on it. So the indifference is like, we call it indifference. It does not make us to do something. But the gain leads us to a decision that says yes. And the loss leads us to a decision that says no. So the human being has only these 2 decisions as a quality. Now we can make billions or however decisions we want. It's infinite that we can make decisions, but all the decisions we do are just yes and no. That's how we govern our body. How do I move my fingers? It's just by yes and by no when I stop moving them. So there's not more there. So everything we experience, we must put either into gain or into loss. And we must not necessarily go for the gain, but the line to avoid loss is absolute. So we can stay here and don't have any issues. But coming under the line of 0 makes us all our issues. So we should be very aware of that. That line is most important to not be, going under it. Because every issue that humans have is because they do not find the no. If they don't have the no, they cannot, if they cannot say no, they cannot avoid loss. And when they cannot avoid loss, they are getting into great issues. So this mechanism is the same in every human being. And I also believe it's the same in every animal, who have also spirit, and their subconsciousness is also working in the same way, because how could they otherwise put their brains and give their electricity except through what they would perceive subconsciously as a gain or as a loss? And the only way to run away is from loss. So disease appears because we cannot avoid loss. Now, looking to the deeper thing, I was thinking, okay, now why do humans believe that they cannot avoid loss? And so I came to see 2 ways of seeing things. It is the eye that is a picture for how we can see an issue or how we cannot see an issue. And the eye is that gives you the understanding, is gain receiving or is gain giving? What is it? And I took the picture from the eyes actually from my main study book, which is the Bible, because our Creator explains in the Sermon on the Mount in a few verses exactly this, what happens in our subconscious, in our heart. He says there in Matthew 6, starting from verse 19, that do not search for a gain or for a treasure on earth, where the moth and rust can eat them and thief can steal them. But search for a treasure that is eternal, that is in heaven, where neither moth nor rust nor thief can go to steal. For where your treasure is, there is also your heart. Now, he just explains the whole process here in these 3 Bible verses. It's very beautiful to see that he says, you need a treasure. We need to go for the gain. No one ever goes for loss. So God set us to go for the gain. But the gain must be something that no one can take away from you. Because in the moment someone takes your gain away, your treasure away, you are lost. You die. King Solomon understood this function of the subconscious. He made a whole, I call it a doctorate thesis about it in his book Ecclesiastes, in which he writes 12 chapters just about the gain and the loss. And he, of course, writes it from the perspective of an eye that does not give you the answer and does not help you. And then Jesus says, the eye is the light of the body. If the eye is clear or healthy, then your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is evil, then your whole body will be darkness. And if that what should be light is darkness, how great is then that darkness? No one can serve two masters. He either serves the one or hates the other. You cannot serve the earthly treasure and the heavenly treasure at the same time. There is only one way. There is only one treasure that will satisfy you. Now, looking to the eye, and this was and is the most important thing to understand, where does the eye arise? Why is it evil? What is evil in the eye and what is healthy on the other eye? So the eye just is, before we put anything into gain and loss, we must look to it, to how we get to it. So how do you get to a loss, or how you get to a gain? And if the one eye says receiving is the gain, then automatically loss must be not receiving, or receive too little, or something is taken away. That's when the eye says it is receiving that makes you rich, and it's not receiving that makes you poor, to lose. And that's on every level. It's just not necessarily just physical, it's on spiritual issues. And if the eye says to you, give is gain, then it's automatically the loss is the opposite of gain, and that's not give or keep. So from these two eyesights, you already can see which one would give you full control over your decisions and which one would take away your decisions. Because what you decide, you must put in your body. Because the yes and no goes directly into your body. Because you have to work with the body in order to do what you ever have to do. You cannot do it without your body. So the body reacts to yes and no. And as long as you have your own decisions in your hands, you are a free spirit. That means liberty and freedom comes as an output. If you have the right eye, you have a right output. And the eye, we will see, is at the entrance, and the yes and no is at the exit of the spirit. So he has an entrance and an exit. And our body gets what is at the exit as that what we decide, as a yes or as a no. And as the yes and no is bound to gain and loss, we must know exactly how do we get to accomplish or to reach the gain that we need to have. Is it by my action, giving, or is it by the other one's action, receiving? So how do you get to be rich? How do you get to have what you have? Is it what others do or what you do? Because not give and keep is also my action, not the other one's action. So when I understood this mechanism, I was very glad. I said, well, if I have the right eye, no one can make me loss. And that's the truth. Only I can do myself loss if I believe that others could do me loss. Now this is a great, great truth to understand. And it would make us, our spirit, forever free. Understanding that it's only in my action. Well, yes and no is my action. It's not the action of another one. But if the spirit is deceived, he's He has an evil eye that tells him, no, it's what the others are doing that makes you sick. It's what the others are doing that brings you into loss. Then, of course, you must control others. If others can give you a disease, like it is said today all over in the world, then you must keep away from others. You must keep distance, because they are a danger for you to bring you loss. That's why wives are separating from their husbands, children from their parents, and parents from their children and from their grandchildren, because everyone is afraid that others can bring them loss. And not just a little loss, but even death, just by their presence. That's an amazing way to put into the human being an information. And of course, the human being must process every information, and he has only two ways. It's either through that eye that brings you to darkness, that is that evil eye where everything then is in darkness, you are as a spirit, or through the true eye that says, no one can harm me, because it's just what I think, what I do, that can harm or not harm. That's one of the greatest important truths we need to understand, that the danger, as a spirit cannot act only from inside, is just how the spirit knows what brings him gain and what brings him loss. And if he knows that it's only himself, then he has the wheels of his life in his hand. But if he must fear that others can bring him into disease, that others can bring him into loss, then he must destroy himself. And this will be the result of this crisis. There is no way out. As long as people believe that others are a danger, and now you have an enemy that is invisible, that cannot be measured outside, it can only seen in the human by some kind of measurement. So then, if that is the only, that is, you can only become dead or sick by what another person just sits in front of you and breathes. Yes, his breath is already a danger for you. Then of course, you either must kill yourself, like many people do it today, or you must kill the other. But in the end, everyone will kill everyone, because if you want to gain life, you must fight for it, and either you kill yourself or you kill the other, because the danger is actually just in the other one, or in you, if you believe it. So, understanding ourselves, understanding how we are made to function, would give us freedom. And for me, the thought, when I first came to understand this in the 2008, 2009, that only I can do me loss. Only I can make myself sick. Such a relief. Such you don't fear your patient, because he cannot give you anything. It's what you do. It's your own action that governs your body. That throat pain on your right side, or that voice disorder, or that eczema on your right nose, only you can do to yourself. But it arises because you believe that others do you loss. Where does this belief come from? And what I could observe, it is not that loss is the issue in itself. It's just that I consider the loss personal. If the loss would not be personal, then we would acknowledge it and we'll say, okay, that's it. But it's not personal. It's not my loss. Yeah, but when you have a child that is sick or diseased or is in danger, then you consider that a personal loss. If it's the child of the neighbor, you consider it's an unpersonal loss. So that's why when the child of the neighbor gets sick, you won't have a personal loss. You have no way, or you don't need to say no because it's not about you, and you're free. But if it's yours, then you must say no, but you cannot go over the other individual, and so you must put force into your body, and then sickness appears sooner or later. So what is the bottom line of the I? Where does the I start? What is it that leads me to either the right way to see things or the wrong way to see things? And of course, as we all have the wrong I, that was what I first came to understand. So why do we consider that things are personal? And that is identity. The bottom line, the beginning of every thought starts in who am I? And I could see that, because it's not written anywhere, on the motivation which is visible. All humans, we know, are selfish by their birth, by their nature, and their pride. And for me, that's the psychological definitions of our motivation. But I try to be more practical, and what I saw as the bottom line of selfishness is I have property, I have possession, something is mine. That's selfishness, that's the bottom root of selfishness. And pride says, I can create something. I can do something out of myself. I can create something. And that's why you start with giving, and then you need something back. So you give, you invest in order to receive. And as long as you receive, everything is fine in your life. But in the moment you don't receive, then you have an issue. And you cannot change that because it's not your action. It's the action of another one. It's something that happens outside of you. But you believe. And this is just a belief, it's just what you think in your mind, that what happens outside of you brings you a personal loss. So this is the overview of the functioning of the subconscious. So we start in identity, and we want to show where that is, and depending on how we see how we reach gain or loss, we will react. And if we would see it correctly, we would have control over our lives. And if not, we would not have control. Remember, it's always when the spirit loses its control. Only when he gets into prisonership. Only then he affects his body. Only then disease can appear. So what does the human being think that he is? Because this is the greatest and most important question, because that's the beginning of our thinking. So as we have seen from the motivation that there are two questions we must ask: do we have property or possession, or we don't have? And I put here the question, why can the human have no property or possession? Because if he would have no property and no possession, then no one will make him to harm himself when he loses that property or possession. Why do we consider that something is ours? And in this situation, the people are most, if you're abused or if you have a child, you will consider that child as your own property. How does that come? Parent says to their children, I have made you and I killed you. Is that the truth? Can we ever possess anything? The answer is no, because the proof that we cannot possess anything is that when we believe we can, we destroy ourselves. And there is no way to destroy yourself if you are in the truth. The truth will always keep you free. The deception is the only one that can make you a prisoner. And the answer is because he cannot create anything. That child that you have is not your creation. That body that you have and you think was damaged by abuse or whatever is not your creation. You are someone, but you possess nothing that you can call your own. So that's why it's important that we understand the truth about ourselves. Then there's another question, that what does the human think he can create? And he thinks he can create something. If not, he would not think he possesses something. And we want to prove what he thinks he can create. So we have basic needs and we need oxygen, and we all know that we cannot create it. And the method of satisfaction is according to the law. You must take in order to give, and you must have a source for that it's the air. You have the need of water. You cannot create water. You must take it in order to give it to your body, and you take it from the water well. You need food, and you have no way to create it, and you must take it from nature in order to satisfy the need. But now we come on the spiritual level, love, that we call is the conclusion of all our spiritual needs. Can we create love? Do we love with our own love? And here humans say yes. They think, well, I gave him all my love. Really? Was it your love you shared? And people say, well, it was my time. I said, okay, when did you create time? Since when your time is yours? Oh, I gave them my power. I gave them gold or money, whatever people give to their loved ones or what they want to give. Since when did you give anything from yourself? Since I can create, I give, and then I want it back. Then you don't need a source, because you are the source of love. So the answer of that question, what does the human think he can create, is love. He thinks he can do something, he can create something from himself. Those are the two basic things that lead us to what the human thinks he is. He can only be a creature or a creator. There are only these two basic identities. There's nothing more. So let's see the difference between a creator and a creature. A creator is different to the creature because he's a system that exists by itself. All things come from him and return to him. That's why I always paint God as a circle, because everything functions in a circle, and a source is that where all things go from and come back. Yes, like the source of all water is the sea, and all the water comes from the sea, and by definition, by the way all things will function, it comes back to where it started, to the source. This is in the human soul, and we find it everywhere in nature. If that is the source, then all things must come back to that source. This is how the system functions. So God has made to function everything according to his image. This is why he is a system that exists by itself. It's a closed system. He does not have any needs. He is totally independent. Because like the sea does not need water, so it gives the water and it comes back to it. So is the example of God. A creature is a channel because it must take first. It's an open system. It must take first in order to give. It's a total dependent system. So the human is a channel. Like everything that was created, it is dependent of first to take, then to give. So here we have the two identities, and we must see, what does the human being think he is? Is he a creature? Does he understand in his subconscious that I'm a creature? Or does he understand in his subconscious I'm a creator? And unfortunately, all our issues come because we believe we are a creator. We don't see that we are just a creature. This is some proofs that we consider ourselves gods. And you can only prove things that are unconscious by visible actions. And the greatest visible action that shows that man thinks he's a god is that he wants to rule over others. The power over others is that what a child does from its inception in the mother. And when it comes out of the mother's womb, we see that it wants to take control. And the battle, who is stronger, starts just at the beginning. And we are in this battle in between the genders and all these things we just show, and especially the crisis that we have in this world today is all about who has the power. Who has the power over others? If the others are a danger for me, I must have power over others. This is the worst behavior of man. That's what we most are against it in our settings, because we want freedom and liberty. But all of us do it. All of us must do it. It does not matter today if people are Christians or whatever they believe. They need to control others. They don't wear a mask, you have to force them to wear a mask, or whatever the issue is. You just need a good reason to have power over others, and you will exercise it. And actually every fight that a person has is because he thinks he must control the other person. So controlling over others, this is something that all do, especially mothers, and I could tell you thousands of stories about that. Then we all judge others. That means you only can judge others because you are the measurement. And if I am the measure, then of course everyone needs to orient after me because I know it best. So you judge others. And then the human asks for worship. People want to be praised, appreciated, respected, and applause. But they have a wrong way to understand respect. Some people come and say, well, you should do what I need in order to respect me, but that would mean I am a slave of the other one. Now, respect is that I leave the other one to do what he wants. It's not that respect is when I follow the ideas of others that say, if you respect me, so please do this or that. Or if you love me, please do this or that. That is nothing else than rulership. It's nothing else than playing God. Putting people under you to worship you. That's not respect. So all people ask for worship. They consider if some people do not behave like they want it, and can also say a lot of stories, then they having a personal loss, so they must go against it. But the greatest proof that we consider ourselves gods is that we give before we take. So God, as we have seen, exists by himself. He has no needs. He only gives. And if he only gives, that's fine. But we are a channel. We must take in order to give. Now, if we give before we take, we must be gods. And on your behavior, that is here, just a few of them, you will see that you find yourself there as well as everyone else. So we all have the proof that through the way we behave, through that what is visible in our lives, we see that we must be gods, not creatures. Because a creature never needs control over others. It never judges others. It never asks for worship because it's equal with the other one. A creature cannot do that. It knows its dependency. It takes first to give. That we prove to what we do that we believe that we are gods. And then the next proof that we must be gods is our ideologies. Ideologies is that what we teach. And we take religions because they are a big part of the world and accept the true one, I say the biblical one. That doesn't mean that Christians are right. It means that what is written in the Bible, when we understand the law, is the right religion. But that we might not even call religion, because religion has its negative connotation because it is a thing that is used to rule over others, to have power to rule over others. And that was how it was used in the past and how it's used today, and it will be used in the future. Actually, what we have today in the world, believing something that we don't see, that it can damage us and so on, is nothing else than religion. Science changed from facts to religion, to beliefs, And whenever there is a belief that leads to power over others, then you know it's a wrong belief. But it proves that it comes from the idea that we are gods. Most religions have in their doctrines the idea that they are gods and they are part of gods or whatever they believe. It doesn't matter. It's always the same root, because all ideologies and all religions are made by man. And these man-made religions must come out of the thought, if I am God, identity proves the beginning of every thought, then you will find in every human ideologies the root of I am a God. Then we take the other ideologies, atheists, agnostics, humanists, communists, however we call them, you will trace them back to one belief. They think they're spiritually independent. That's why they don't need a higher being over them. They don't need a source for their spiritual needs because they think love and righteousness and all this, they come from themselves. They prove by that what they teach, by that to what they adhere, that they think they're spiritually independent. But we will see that in our next lecture, that there is never a way that a channel, no matter if it's a physical or a spiritual channel, can be independent. And then we come to science. We are in this mess in this world today because science believes in the theory of evolution. It believes that from a smaller being, a high being evolves. So like a plant grows, yes, a seed must grow, and that's how it was made to. And now we make the wrong analogy and say, okay, if a plant grows, then out of a bacteria can become a human. It just needs to grow long enough and change something in it, but at the end, from bacteria, you came to be a human. So they believe the human is the highest being in evolution. So if you're the highest being, you must be God. The theory of evolution itself proves that humans believe they have made themselves, because that's where chance comes in. There where there is a law in the universe, chance is excluded. But where there is no law, where I just go by my own mind, deceptive mind, I will have issues. So to think disease or everything in this world happens by chance, and that takes away all the security that was put by God into your spirit that you need for 100%. So all ideologies, there is none ideology on earth that does not prove that their root thought, where they arise from, is I am God. Behavior and teaching prove unmistakably that everyone has the same wrong identity. So that wrong identity is I am God. While the truth is I am a creature of God. And as a creature, you always have a creator, just by definition. You cannot be a creature coming from chance, because that doesn't exist. the law of the universe, the basic law of the universe, prove that nothing can exist or function by itself, except it would be God. But we are not gods. We are created beings. We need love. That's our need, and we can only secure it if we understand the truth about ourselves, that we have no property, that we cannot create what we need. We must, according to the law, take it in order to give it. And we only get into loss when we stop giving. Because when a channel is blocked, then everything stops. And this is the process. So in conclusion, the one thing that matters is identity. Am I a child of God, a creature of God, or I am a God? And I have 4 things that will show the difference of it. If I'm a God, I must be spiritual independent. I live from myself. Now the humans know his physical dependencies, but he does not know his spiritual dependency. He's totally ignorant that he's spiritual dependent, that all his thoughts come because he orients after another person, that he is leaning on the mind of another one when he is thinking. He thinks he's spiritually independent from our source. What makes him to act like he acts? The truth is that if we are a child of God, we are spiritually dependent. As our body is dependent on a higher system, so to say, that's nature, so the spirit must be dependent on a higher spirit than our human spirit is, that is God. Then, if you're a God, how many things are yours? Everything you consider is yours. And that's how we see children. Everything they take is theirs. They haven't been taught that. It's just their nature. While the truth is, nothing is theirs because nothing is mine. I did not make it what I think is mine. Then, how many things, if you're a God, you do out of yourself? And that is everything people think they do out of themselves. Everything I do out of me. The truth is, if you're a creature, if you're a channel, you can do nothing out of yourself. And then the 4th thing, the amazing thing is, how many things revolve about you if you're a God? How many things must circle around yourself? Now you know the answer. Everything revolves around me. That's the basic thing. People just revolve around themselves. Everything is about me. Everything is about me. Even religious people have not understood that the truth is nothing revolves around me. It's not about me. That look to every ideology, look to every teaching, it's all about me. Everything. Fear would disappear from one's life if he would understand that nothing revolves around me. Every fear comes because I am the center. It's impossible. So there is one thing only that gets us into trouble, that is loss. So who has the loss? If you consider yourself a God, the loss must be yours. I have loss. If you know that you are a creature, you know that whatever you experience, even if you lose your leg or hand or whatever, it's not my loss, because this body is not mine. If you're a God, the loss of that organ is personal, because you think, it's my. If you're not a God, you know that's the loss of the Creator, because I belong to Him. If you believe you're a God, I am the victim. Every issues that humans have come because they believe they are the victims of others. It's very subconscious, because in the moment they would realize they think they're a victim, they would abhor the idea, but they don't see it. Every issue, every prisonership arises because you consider yourself a victim, of course, of others. If you would know the truth, that you do not belong to yourself, the idea of ever thinking you're a victim is excluded. So, at the end, all humans have just one problem, or better to formulate it as I wrote it here, all human problems have just one cause. The fighting between mother and child has just one cause, and that is, I am God, and the child thinks I am God. That's why they are in a fight. That's why they want something from each other. So, how many issues do we need to solve? I'm so glad that it's just one. If everything starts from one button, yes, you push it here and you start your device. And that's how all things work. If we all start, every thought starts from one cause, from one thing, that is, who am I, from identity, then we have just one cause. If all problems arise from who am I, then I have one cause, and I must change just this one cause. I must come to understand who I am and acknowledge the truth. And that is the lecture of the next hours to come. Do we have a solution to come out of that, what we are born with? We have no choice that we think we are gods. There is only one choice. When we see where the deception leads us, to want to become free from it. And having again our life under our control, not over the control of others.